Yes, yes. Another edition of the Over Under Football Draft Preview. This week, we're going to be looking at receivers, Mike. You've been filling your boots looking at your receivers. You've got a big old list for us to get through here.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to have been able to see some on the All 22, evaluating the quarterbacks. So that got three or four up and running for me straight away. And then I just sort of got a bit, I got a bit carried away with it and had a lot of free time this spring. So I had I had plenty of time to look at some of these prospects. So we won't do a huge amount of detail on all of them, but we'll just introduce everybody and just show people who the main players are going to be in the first day 2 days of the draft.
Yeah, sounds good. It's a big receiver draft, a lot of depth here. I believe you have about 15 prospects. You've really ground the tape on these. I've watched quite a few play, obviously, over the course of the last couple of years over here. So I'll chime in, but you'll steer this ship, Mike. So over to you.
All right. Can you see the screen, Thomas, here? Is this working for you?
Yes, this is all working.
Okay, so we're going to go from bottom to top, and we'll whiz through these first five quite quickly. And you can see here the first two, number 15 and number 14, Keon Coleman and Xavier Legette. I've got like a late second, early third round grade on. They're probably a project or a future number two receiver in the NFL for me. Probably wouldn't end up necessarily being a number one at this point on what we've seen. So we'll have a look at their profiles. So first up here, you've got Keon Coleman. So as you can see, he's got really good height and weight, 6'3", 213. He's a big boundary ball receiver. His problem is a lack of relative athleticism compared to the rest of the class. So you can see there 4.61 40 time, 10-yard split is not brilliant. The vertical for a jump ball receiver isn't outstanding either. Somebody that's 6'3", only getting up 38 inches. So and he just doesn't separate. He just doesn't separate. You can see on tape everything is contested. And we've had people in the last couple of years where that kind of profile doesn't necessarily play in the NFL as effectively. Maybe Mike Thomas on the New Orleans Saints being maybe more of an outlier if you wanted to look for somebody on the more positive end of the comparison. But yeah, I'm not as high on him as the consensus. I think most people have him as like an early second, but I think that lack of separation there, being more of a basketball player on the outside, he doesn't actually win that many of those contested catches. I think his futures as a power strong slot for me.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I'm higher on him. I think I really enjoyed watching him play. Great handsman. He's good at catching the ball, which is a key for me. And I fell in love with the size. It's interesting what you say about the contested catches, because that kind of reminds me a bit of our boy Quentin Johnson from last year. You were very high on that when looking at his profile, and I perhaps didn't pay attention to that. So no, I like the detail you've gone into there. That's some food for thought. I would have him a top second round prospect for me.
Oh, obviously. I mean, and it's as you've coined this off season, Tom, and it's the phrase we're going to be sticking to. I think it's different strokes for different folks, and I think that different people like different things. I do want to shout out his Florida State teammate while we're on here, Johnny Wilson, who is very similar. It will probably be a day 3 prospect from Florida State. They both played on the outside there, two huge men. Johnny Wilson is 6'7", 230 pounds. He's got 35 and 3/8 inch arms. And he blocked somebody literally on the All 22 I watched of Jordan Travis. He literally blocked a cornerback off the screen, cleaned him out. So if I was going to, it's just relative value, right, for me in the draft. I think if I was going to take that boundary jump ball receiver, I maybe would look at Johnny Wilson on day 3, just as more of a project. I'm not sure I'd waste a second round pick on it personally, but as I say, different people like different things. So yeah, next up in this tier, we had Xavier Legette. He's a 5-year, 5th-year senior. First 4 years of his career. The big knock on him is he didn't produce the first 4 years of his career. What I actually found out subsequently through the good guys at Bootleg is he had a huge amount of family tragedy coming out of high school. Both of his parents died before he graduated high school, so he was suffering quite a lot with mental health issues. And then really his 4th year, he played in the bowl game and had an amazing bowl game. And then last year, his senior final year at South Carolina, he balled out. He was Spencer Rattler's go-to guy. And he's got an outstanding athletic profile, and you can see him separate on the film, which is why I have him ahead of Coleman here. I probably have him dinged down in this kind of range just because that offense is very loose. There isn't very much detail in it. He's going to have to be a lot more detailed in his routes at the NFL level, and also just that production question: like, is that a one-off, 1-year wonder, or is he going to get better? I think he's going to be a good NFL player. You look at these amazing testing numbers here, really outstanding testing numbers. So that frame, prototypical NFL size, and as we'll see as we go through this exercise, 6'1", 221 is one of the better frames in the entire draft class that you would expect to be durable at the next level. And that is a major knock on a lot of these guys coming up. I think you've seen a bit of Leggett, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely love this guy's size and what he does with the ball in his hands. He's definitely one of my favorite prospects. He's a bit of a jitterbug for someone who weighs so much. AJ Brown kind of vibes for me. But it is a struggle because usually I'm not that high on guys who have just a 1 year of production. It's a bit of a bugbear for me personally. Also that Shane Beamer offense there, but coming from the Lincoln Riley tree, you usually question the receivers who come out of those systems. So I want to be higher on him than I am, but remains to be seen. There could be like a Percy Harvin sort of role for him. I don't know. Like that could be an odd comparison, but we'll see how he goes. But probably higher ceiling than the lad we just discussed, Keon Coleman, I'd say.
I think so, just with that athletic profile. As you say, he's only run 4 routes really in his college career, just in being one of those very simplistic offenses. So the nuance will have to be developed. But I mean, look at the tools you've got to work with. I'd be betting on that. I'd be betting on that with a late second round pick for sure. If I was in a draft route. What we'll do is we'll bring up the list here. So these are my second round talents. They're going to be a solid NFL number 2 or a proficient slot receiver from the outset, is my feeling on some of these guys. So at 13, we've got Roman Wilson.
We're back from some technical issues. All good to go now. So we've done Coleman and Leggett, and Mike, you're going to take us through your next round of receivers.
Yeah. I was in full flow then as well. Spoiler alert to number 13 there. So we've gone from second to third round grades to second grades, really people that I identify as number 2s or good slot receivers in the NFL straight away with room to grow, obviously. First one is Roman Wilson. So he's a Michigan man, standing at 5'11", 185 pounds, true slot receiver, very little usage on the outside. He wore the number 1 for Michigan last year, which signifies a player that has outstanding character, apparently, and is a great teammate. So you shouldn't have to worry about him too much from a off the field perspective, I guess, would be the way forward. He's a cool story. He grew up in the islands of Hawaii as well, so he used to have to fly between islands to train with his receivers coach, which is quite fun. And he's a really good athlete. All of this is positive. 4.39 40-yard dash. He didn't do a 3-cone at the combine, but he did it his pro day. Sub 7-second 3-cone drill, which is a really good number. However, I will say his size does show up on film. He does look small. He doesn't block. He's not an effective blocker, and as a pure slot receiver, I prefer he was a better blocker, if I'm honest, more physical, nasty blocker. And there were a couple of plays against Alabama in that Rose Bowl game where he left meat on the bone. He caught the ball inbounds after JJ McCarthy had taken a shot and sort of just ran 5 yards and then just dipped out of bounds. And if I was JJ McCarthy watching that back afterwards, I think I'd be saying, "Come on, like I'm taking a beating back here, and you don't want any contact down the field." It seems at times. So I dinged him a little bit for that. That was the only all-22 I got to see of him, and he didn't make a great impression in that game. So all things considered, I think 13 is a good spot for him. Have you got
Yeah, I
any?
mean, we see receivers do that on Sundays, unfortunately, in the NFL. So I'm not sure that will curb anyone's thinking about him. But yeah, for you and me, that's you got to put your shoulder in and just try and run through a guy and get a few more yards. That's it's not a good sign for me. Production, good, much more production than I thought in his senior year. There, I'm just looking here. We got 48 receptions, almost 800 yards for the lad, and 12 touchdowns. So yeah, he was utilized actually, which is surprising. And people slept on Nico Collins last year, another Michigan receiver who was a very good football player. So yeah, I think he's definitely got a future ahead of him, and probably better than some people think. I would say slightly flying under the radar, but I haven't had many people talk about him, Mike.
No, and he's a lot higher in league circles, just from what I'm reading. I think the league loves him a lot, and I think these next sort of 4 or 5 names I'm going to read off to you, people have them going in all different orders depending on preference. So there'll be some teams with an early second round grade on Roman Wilson, I imagine. So you'll probably see him go high on day two.
Yeah,
It's a good player, just not a great player for me.
yeah,
Um, now this is one of my guys in this draft process. There, so I had this all nicely teed up, and now it's going to try and play videos on me, which is frustrating. But if we ignore the NFL.com foibles here, we've got man, we got Malachi Corley. He's a running back in a wide receiver's frame here. Well, no, it's really a running back frame, I guess, playing wide receiver, 5'11", 215 pounds. A good arm length for a shorter guy, 32 and an eighth. Nice hand size there, reasonable hand size. And you see the
Hilltopper,
sorry,
wonderful.
yeah,
Hilltopper, wonderful to
yeah,
see.
Hilltopper, and he didn't doesn't look like we have combine. That's interesting. Did he not work out at the combine? Oh, interesting. Oh, there'll definitely be some teams that ding him for that. Um,
Yeah,
but he's a dynamic, get the ball in his hands kind of athlete. I don't think he's a similar player to Debo Samuel, but it's a similar skill set. Get it to him
yeah,
on a drag route, a screen, a quick out, a little hitch, and he runs through contact better than any player in the draft at running back or receiver that I've seen for my money. He's
okay,
absolutely he's a jack in a box. He's
nice.
a he's a I've got a defined role that I can see for him at the NFL level, which some of these guys that's harder to project that what they're actually going to be. I know exactly
Yeah.
what Mike Hawley's going to be. He's also going to be dynamic in the return game.
Mm.
Those new kickoff return rules, we won't get into too much detail on that now. Maybe that's something we can do in the preseason preview or something, but that's going to sort of suit a running back skill set, I think, more than a receiver skill set. And he kind of has both. The one thing he doesn't do is he doesn't run routes down the field very often. He did it at the Senior Bowl a little bit. They asked him to do it, and he was okay on it, but not great. He just is unrefined in that area. And
Yeah.
if you bring in Malachi Corley and you're running him down the field every time, you've completely wasted a draft pick because that's not what he is. You want to hand it off to him on a reverse, even out of the backfield as a running back, and throw it to him short and let him create. He's a dynamite little player. I love him.
All right. Good. Yeah. I mean, I've seen nothing of him, so I can't add too much here, but I love the frame. And yeah, I think in that usage will be very, very enjoyable for an offense that can utilize him properly. And yeah, I'm sure his highlights are fun to watch. So I need to
Yeah,
check in on.
no, do I wouldn't
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend anybody just making assessments off highlight packages. But if you want like a fun 10 minutes, there's a 10-minute cut up of Malachi Corley on YouTube that's really fun viewing.
Nice.
Um, so it's similar. I would say sort of like a pop in the popcorn type player, Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
When I was watching his film, I got entirely overexcited and started texting you that you might sneak into my top 10. I've calmed down. I've calmed down on that a little bit. You see the frame there, 5'11", 165 pounds. Um, Shortish arms for a wide receiver and very small hands, just 8 3/4. But famously, he ran the record combine 40-yard dash in 4.21 seconds. He vertical jumped 41 inches and broad jumped almost 11 inches. Basically, he's an explosive athlete. A high school sprinter, all-state sprinter in Texas. Sorry, in California. Sorry, played college football at Texas. Um, and he is going to be a threat down the field. If you already have an X and a Z receiver in your receiving room, and you're just looking for a third option to run all of the deep routes in the playbook, I think Xavier Worthy is a great pickup. He lacks ideal play strength, and contested catch is not his game at all. So I wouldn't necessarily have him in a traditional Z or X position, but if you can get him with a Josh Allen and just fly him down the field,
Yeah.
he's going to be a problem. He's also going to be dynamic in the return game and on handoffs and screens. So I think there's a usage for him, and that's what drops him down into the second round. I think a lot of people lost their minds when you ran a 4-2-1 and they're putting him up there in the top 5 receiver conversation, which, it just feels. I can't see that to me because I can't see what his usage would be to use that higher pick on him. But he's a really exciting player.
Yeah. He's someone I need to watch a bit more of as well. I did see a bit of Texas the last few years, but they've got 3 receivers they use a lot, so I didn't focus in on too much on him. If you run a 4-2-1, you're probably going to get picked in the first round. That's what history tells us. Someone's going to pick him. I guarantee you someone is. Whether, like you said, he's probably not a first round talent, but the 40 time alone should get him up there. But I think with most of these guys you're going to discuss, various people have mocked them in the first round at some point or another. So it is different strokes for different folks here.
The comparison of Xavier Worthy to Deshaun Eagles great Deshaun Jackson, I think, is not quite accurate. Djax was a slightly bigger player and better through contact at the catch point. But what I will say is that you obviously can't teach speed, and watching him separate off the line of scrimmage did remind me a little bit of Djax. The other thing that reminded me of him is he's very durable. Never missed a game at Texas despite that small frame. So I think normally those quick guys get dinged with that knock there, that they're not durable enough. But he actually was very durable in college. This is the last of this tier, I think. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to check my notes because I've forgotten where exactly I tiered everybody. No, we're nowhere near the end of this tier. What am I talking about? Okay.
This is an interesting. Like I said, I think a lot of people have mocked some of these guys first round as well. But an absolute greyhound here for you, Mike.
Yeah, no, and he is, and they used him one. No, they actually. This is Troy Franklin, we should say, University of Oregon. He was Bo Nix's go-to man in Eugene the last couple of years. 6'2", 176 pounds, very slight frame. And you can see him struggle to get off the line of scrimmage. They don't press you very much in the Pac-12, but I think you're going to have to find creative ways to get him off the ball in the NFL, because I think he's going to consistently struggle in that area. But he does get vertical. He ran every vertical route they ran at Oregon. Troy Franklin was the one running it. They didn't really let anyone else do it. And he did make some good catches down the field, and he separates. More importantly, he actually separates. Receivers, for me, need to separate and catch the football, and he does both in spades. You see a 4.4 140 time there is excellent. Good vertical jump, good broad. I like to see him run the 3 cone. I did have questions about his agility. He's not the most sudden athlete, but a very respectable 6'9" number there. That made me go back and look at the film again, because I didn't see him as being that kind of agile. But it's good to know he's got it in the locker. Questions about him will be play strength again at the catch point, and in the run game blocking. That dinged him down and knocked him down a little bit for me. What did you see?
I would do the same. I would ding him for that. Absolutely. So didn't see much of him. Didn't watch too much Oregon this year. But I think the physical profile alone should be enough to see him go second round somewhere, I think.
The NFL draft media at large, the sort of the internet draft media, not the TV draft media, absolutely love Troy Franklin. People have him as like wide receiver 5 in some cases.
Wow.
Okay. But I don't think the league is as high on him. Just from what you hear, like people like Dane Brugler and Daniel Jeremiah, who are really tuned in to what the league. I think he's I think he's more of a late day 2 pick for the NFL rather than late second round pick. But I liked him a bit better than that. I'm kind of in between the two, I would say. Split the difference there. This is a fun player. Next up, Ricky Pearsall, slot/Z receiver for the Gators last year. And is a slightly light frame, 189 pounds, but this guy is tough is tough as shit, Tom. I will tell you. He puts his he puts his nose in there in the run game. I think one scout described him as he chew glass in between series. So he's a bit of a hard man, Ricky Pearsall. Um, he's a really interesting prospect. He really separates. He creates so much separation, both down the field and laterally. They just had awful quarterback play and terrible offensive structure for the last 2 years in Florida. He's really had no chance. He was the only person that Richardson was throwing to last year, year before last, and he was the only person they were throwing to this year. Really good production, really good toughness. I think his dad played NFL football, so he got bloodlines. The questions will be kind of shorter arms, only 189 pounds, so you'd worry about durability. And just the routes that he's run doesn't have a very nuanced route tree coming from that pretty simplistic offense. But he's a really fun player, and I've actually teed up. I think he actually won college football's catch of the year last year, which I've got teed up here for us to watch. So, but what do you want to see that?
Yeah, no, I want to see it. Yeah, I haven't seen too much of him. Florida have not interested me at all the last few years, so I've not watched them. But this is I haven't actually seen this, so I'm very excited to watch this catch.
Yeah, so this is at home against Charlotte, the mighty Charlotte.
Oh.
They're probably I don't even know who their mascot is. It's probably the Terrapins.
No,
here we go.
Oh,
hanging on in contact with the one-hander. Yeah, so
he's a bad man.
He is Slick Rick Pearsall. He's a fun player. He actually grew on me a little bit. I didn't love him to begin with, but then the more you watch him, you realize he's the only one. He's literally Mertz is the quarterback is only looking at Pearsall. So it's hard to be a marked man like that and still get open and get the football. So he did really well considering that.
Nice.
Okay, and I think we're getting up towards the end of the this sort of second tier here. Ja'Lynn Polk, or Ja'Lynn Polk. I've never actually nailed down what the correct pronunciation is, but he was Michael Penix's number 2 receiver for the Washington Huskies last year. A really good pro style frame, 6'1", 203 pounds, big hands, long arms. Only ran a 4.52 40. I mean, that's respectable for the kind of role that he's going to play in the NFL. I'd be more worried about the vertical jump, only 37.5 inches. You'd like to think he'd be a bit more vertical than that, because he really was a downfield threat. When people were doubling Odunze, they went bombs away down the field to Polk a lot, and you saw him make a lot of contested catches, but you did also see him separate down the field. I think he has the future to be a really solid number 2 in the NFL, much like a Chris Godwin or something like that in Tampa Bay. You know, that really the Chris Godwin to Tampa Bay's
reliable guy.
Exactly. So if you already have a Tyreek Hill in your offense, this is the guy you put across from him, and he can run all the routes for me. Strong, tough, durable frame. He just is not going to be an explosive athlete, and for me, he's never going to be the straw that stirs the drink at the NFL level. He's never going to be the true NFL number 1. But I think he's a really good player.
And that's interesting, because in the latest Schrager mock that I was very excited to have a look at, Schrager's mocked him to the Chiefs at 32, and I like that because we've got Hollywood Brown one side, Kelsey's technically wide receiver 1 anyway, and I think Polk will have a nice role cut out for him there, just as a possession guy. Who could also get downfield as well and just add a little something that Chiefs haven't had before. I quite like that pick, actually. And struggled with injuries, I think, a little bit, but came on strong towards the end of their championship run there, the Huskies.
He was a bit banged up. He was a bit banged up last year. Yeah, I think it's worth pointing. That's a good point you make, because with that size, people don't talk about the injuries as much, but he actually he missed more time than Worthy did in college football. But it's worth mentioning those things. So onto Ladd McConkey, the definitive slot receiver. Not elite production at Georgia, very good production without being elite production. What this guy does is separate better than anybody in the draft class for me. Maybe Malik Neighbors. He is dynamite in the slot, getting open. He actually ran 67% of his routes outside though, which is what I didn't realize. His usage in that Georgia offense was really diverse. And people are going to see, small. Well, no, he's 6 foot tall, but shorter white receiver. You immediately think Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, slot only, limited athletically. But that's actually not the case at all. He ran a 4.39 40-yard dash.
My word.
Not elite in the jumps, and I'm not surprised to see that because he wasn't used that way. He wasn't down the field out jumping people, boxing people out. What he was open over the middle of the field on third down every time that he needed to. And that is what people are going to ask him to do in the NFL. And he's run those routes already in college and got open on them against SEC competition. So what you're asking, he's one of the rare instances where what you're going to ask him to do at the NFL level, he's done exactly that at the college level, and he's been elite at it. So I think in 4 years, he may not be the best receiver from this draft class, but you will say he's just a rock solid NFL player. This guy should, barring injuries, and he did struggle with injuries last season, it's important to say, and that weight is a little low, so there is sort of scope for injuries there. But I think you could end up seeing him just having a solid 8-10 year NFL career, just over the slot, over the middle. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's going to go in the first round. Even though I have him as a second round, I think somebody might sneak up into the first and grab him.
I think so. He's a more athletic version of Hunter Renfrow. He's a fellow Clemson alum, and
He played for Georgia, Tom, not Clemson.
Oh goodness, what am I about? Okay, well, still, I just made the connection there just because they they're
similar players. Yeah.
But someone was saying the other day on a podcast, I forget who, but league officials, league scouts and stuff had fallen in love with his football IQ and stuff. I think he's a real NFL team guy who will nail the interviews and have a really good process. And I reckon that pushed him up into the first round. Be interesting to see where it goes. But I reckon first round through.
Yeah, no, me too. I think somebody would want to take a chance on him. I think maybe Detroit at 29. They could do with although I guess Amon-Ra St. Brown is the definitive slot receiver, so maybe not. But, I think he'd be a really good complementary piece somewhere in the slot.
Yeah.
Now, this is where my list gets controversial. So I've got Brock Bowers here as the best of the rest. He's got a fringe first round grade, but I would probably just sneak him in as a second round player for me. For me, obviously, universally viewed as a tight end. When you actually watch Georgia play football, that really isn't where he plays. He plays in the slot, and he plays as like an H-back in the backfield, and on reverses, even on reverses and things like that. He's not really an inline tight end. So I felt a bit funny.
He can block though, can't he? His blocking's pretty decent.
I didn't think it was mind-blowingly good, the blocking.
Okay.
I think it's very similar to like Laporta last year, where it's just where it's like you can get by with it. You don't want him head up over a defensive end in the NFL. That's not going to work. That isn't going to work. They'll beat the shit out of him. So he needs you could definitely work him on a double team against a defensive end with a tackle, but you wouldn't want to leave him on. It's not like George Kittle or someone like that where you can leave him on the end. The best way of thinking about him is as to me, I've seen him compared to Kittle, which I think is strange because he's got nowhere near the blocking skill. I think the best way of thinking of him is like a light Travis Kelce in terms of not light in terms of weight, just in terms of what he can bring to the offense. And if you have a quarterback that's willing to utilize him like that and that can utilize him like that, I think he'll be a very effective NFL player. I think he's the best of the rest of these receivers. He's not a first round. I'm not necessarily looking to take a slot receiver in the first round, which is why I've got him sort of at the top of this second round list. He's a big power slot, which a lot of NFL offenses are looking for now. And I think he's got the potential to be a very good one. If you put him in line as a tight end and ask him to block and sort of run down the seam on play action, number one, I don't think he's very good at that. Number two, you're completely wasting what he can be at the NFL level for me.
Yeah, I think so. The comparison to Kelce is interesting. I'd like to see this guy line up in odd positions and take some snaps and stuff on trick plays. That'd be fun to see him. Best after the catch prospect I've seen in some time. Just knows how to break tackles. I really rate him highly for that. As a tight end, yeah, take him in the top 10 or top 15. That'll be tricky. We've seen it happen before, though. People like to take these gambles on tight ends. I think his skill set probably warrants it, but I do agree with you kind of where you have in place there. I think end of the first fringe player is probably right as a slot receiver. That would be interesting to see where he goes.
Yeah, and now I'm going to completely contradict myself. But if you've got a team that uses the quarterback run game, I think he might give you a bit more value. You can have him lined up in the backfield in the pistol as a fullback, and then you can run, bash one side, QB counter to the other side, and he's a lead blocker for you. So do you put a nickel back out there to stop that, to cover him as a receiver, or do you put a linebacker out there to stop the quarterback run? So it could somewhere like Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Baltimore would offer more. Would he would have a more natural home, I think, in those offenses at the NFL level, because there's other ways that you can utilize his skill set other than just lining him up in the slot all the time. And I think that would be intriguing. So I wouldn't. I think the Colts at 10, which is where he's mocked most, I think is a bit rich for my blood, but the Colts at 15 for me is where it starts getting interesting for him. But purely as a talent evaluator, I think second round, because I don't really know what to do with him unless you've got a great offensive play caller that's telling you exactly how they're going to use him. I'd have my doubts.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I will add his highlight package against Auburn is one of the most hilarious I've seen. Breaking about 5 tackles on one run. The Auburn defenders just throwing some shoulders at him. He just waltzing through the tackles. Yeah, I might be a bit higher on him actually than I originally said, just for his break tackle ability. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely,
that was a highlight for me.
Oh, look at if he comes into the NFL, lines up in line and kicks the shit out of defensive ends for 10 years, I'm gonna look foolish. But I just haven't seen him do that at Georgia. Maybe it's because they didn't ask him to do it, and that's
no, get him in space. I think
that's one of the big questions of the draft, right?
Yeah.
So that brings us neatly onto. Oh well, hang on. We should probably just go to these next two because they're in a tier all of their own. So first rounders for me that have the potential to be a number 1 receiver. So somebody that leads the receiving attack. And they just need some polish and some development. So they'll probably go in the mid to late first round for me.
Yeah.
The first of those is Adonai A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. If the internet will cooperate with me. So you can see their prototypical size, 6'2", 205 pounds, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, long, smooth, dynamic athlete, runs a wide variety of routes, gets open consistently, separates with ease. He just is a separation machine when he wants to be. And we'll get onto that later as a negative. I was really surprised with the contested catch. He's so strong at the catch point. And I was also surprised with the ball in his hands. He just runs away with it. You know when Patrick Mahomes runs with the ball and he just sort of glides away from people, and you're like, well, he's not even that fast. How is he doing that? Adonai Mitchell does the same thing. He just glides away. It's like a smooth sprinter's gait he's got. It's really fun to watch on film. I'd recommend. Again, he's another one where you pop the popcorn, sit down, and watch his highlight film. It's really good fun. 4.34 40-yard dash. Jumped. It was 11-4.
Got to take a call for a sec. Sorry. Keep going. I'll join back in a sec.
Yep, no worries. As I was saying, 11 foot 4 inch broad jump, which is an enormous jump. Yeah, he's a brilliant athlete. Brilliant athlete. The problem that you've got with AD is the effort. So he's not a very willing blocker at all at this point in his career. And there are times when you watch him run routes where he just seems to quit on a route, or if he's running like a vertical clear route for one of his teammates, he doesn't run it anywhere near as hard as if he was the first read in the progression and he thought he was going to be getting the football. And I think there's been some. I think through the interview process, he's kind of sort of chafed a few people with his personality. I think you need like a strong offensive coordinator, quarterback aligned vision of what you are on offense, give him a very defined role as a rookie, just as a talented X receiver. And then I think if he, with the right coaching and the right environment, I think he can become a number one. That, as I said earlier in the thing, really stirs the drink for your offense. It's really exciting player. I love AD Mitchell. I'm a sucker for AD Mitchell.
That's good. Yeah, as I said, I didn't watch too much of Texas. I am interested now that Sark's there, though. Big history producing NFL receivers for Mr. Sarkisian. So it'll be interesting to see how these Texas receivers fare when they get to the next level. Because if it's anything to go by, they're going to do a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think he's an exciting one. If he fails, it won't be. If he not fails, but if he doesn't live up to the round one billing in the NFL, it will be because of effort, not because of talent.
Okay.
We've got 10 minutes to rattle through these. My goodness. Right, better hurry up here. So, Brian Thomas Jr. Again, prototypical NFL size, 6'3", 210 pounds, long arms, big hands, explosive athlete. Again, the most incredible down the field talent. The NFL, a lot of the comp that a lot of NFL evaluators use for him is Christian Watson, the Packers. The thing is, he's 2 years younger than Christian Watson is now. Coming into the league, was coming into the league than Christian Watson was. Christian Watson was 24. Thomas is only 22. And he already has, for me, he already has variety in his game. He isn't just a down the field greyhound. He does have some versatility in his game. And I noticed him on the Jayden Daniels LSU film. I noticed him before I noticed Neighbors against Texas A&M. He just took that game over, which I think that says a lot. The negative for him is just the lack of development. So he doesn't run a diverse route tree at the moment. They used Neighbors on all of the short, intermediate, and some vertical stuff, and they really just use Brian Thomas Jr. on the vertical stuff. So he's going to have to develop nuance in his route running, and he's going to have to diversify how he's deployed in the NFL. But I mean, he's a terrifying prospect. I would really love to have him on my team for sure.
Someone mentioned someone was talking about previous NFL receivers drafted the first, second round. Someone mentioned Terrence Marshall from LSU the other day. And I thought, is this guy potentially a similar kind of prospect to him? I don't know. I just made a connection there. The second LSU receiver off the board in that year, the number 2 guy technically, Terrence Marshall never really panning out. So I just wonder if it's similar to him or if he's a little bit more athletic. What's your take on
better
that?
Athlete. Explosive. Like when you watch him on the All-22, he just eats the ground up about 3 yards at a time. The stride is enormous. The stride length. He's terrifying cornerbacks on the film that you watch because he just eats their cushion up in about 2 strides and then he's gone. And they can't stop him because he's 6'3", 210 pounds with long arms. You can't jam him either. I think he's a better athlete than Terry, but he played the same role in LSU's offense. So it's a really good thought and a good comparison because he played the X in that LSU offense where it's just all vertical and then maybe the curl and a comeback where you snap it off as a change up. So he's either going to be Terrence Marshall or he's going to be, I mean, the ceiling is pretty high for him, honestly. I almost said Randy too much, but like just the sheer vertical nature of his game is exciting to me, and this is my bias on I prefer those guys, and that's there's people that are higher on some of those slot receivers that I mentioned than they are on Brian Thomas Jr. and they are on AD Mitchell, but to me, you've got to shoot for the moon and try and get a down the field football player when you can. And that's what these guys both bring. So we've got 6 minutes to talk about the big 3. And that probably isn't long enough for us to do them justice, but they've been talked about so much that if anybody's watching this, they'll have heard everything we have to say about them already anyway. But just to round this process off, these 3 are my round 1, number 1 potential. Top 10 true number 1s. They're true number ones in the NFL for me immediately, and they have potential to be in the sort of the top 20 receiver discussion very
Yeah.
quickly for me. All three of them. Malik Neighbors, a dynamic one of one athlete with the ball in his hands in the open field. An absolutely unbelievable athlete. Doesn't look like he tested the combine, which doesn't surprise me because when you watch the film, he doesn't really need to test at the combine. You can just see
Yeah.
him running through SEC secondaries like it's like they're junior school kids. The knock for
Yeah.
me is that his best deployment is out of the slot.
Mm.
And he does struggle on press coverage on the outside, and he doesn't play a lot of snaps as a true outside receiver. So I think he's a bit scheme dependent. I think you have to have somebody that knows how to use a player like that. And as you gradually build up that release package and that outside receiver game for him, because it doesn't come naturally. But the ball in hand stuff, the way you can use him as a rookie is really, really easy. Short, easy throws. And yeah, his get off on the line of scrimmage out of the slot is unreal. Only Ladd McConkey really compares, but he's a much better athlete than Ladd with the ball in his hands.
Okay, cool.
So this is probably the last of my personal favorites from this draft, and that's Rome Odunze. 6'3", 212 pounds, unbelievable NFL frame. He did run and test at the combine, which I love. I love the fact that he backed himself to do that. Put up very good numbers. None of those numbers would surprise anyone that's watched his film. The 3-cone was even more than I was expecting. Excellent 3-cone, 7 seconds there for him. He's the vertical threat, and the intermediate threat, and the short threat in that Washington offense. He did everything. He was catching screens, he was catching slants, he was catching posts, deep posts, contested double coverage down the field where Penix just threw up prayers to him. He did everything. They true double covered him in the Pac-12 with a safety and a corner, and he beat it. You can line him up outside, you can line him up inside. He really is the most diverse talent of all of these receivers, where I think he's scheme proof, truly scheme proof, and I think he's the only one of these players that I could say that about. I love Rome Odunze. I think he's my favorite receiver. He's closer to Harrison than he is to Neighbors for me in this class. Like I think he's going to be an elite NFL prospect, and I'm really excited to see where he ends up. Hopefully not New York, because I don't want to have to play against him twice a year for the Giants.
Yeah, that'd be a nightmare. Yeah, goodness, there with the Eagles secondary. Goodness, no hope there at all. But one of my favorite players to watch in the college season, and what I will say about the two top guys that we both have top, they'll just catch anything, and that's what makes you a top receiver who's going to go in the top 5 or top 10. It's that simple. They're just not going to drop balls. So, love that.
Elite talent. Probably the best I've seen since Ja'Marr Chase, I would say, Odunze, coming out of college for me. And blimey, no, I shouldn't say that at all, because a lot of people have different number ones in this class.
Yeah.
I would say the consensus number one is Marvin Harrison Jr., but that is by no means everybody's number one.
Yeah.
Again, prototypical size. Are you noticing a trend with these first round guys? They all have a very similar frame.
It's amazing compared to last year. We were just looking at Quentin Johnson and then the small guys, and this year this is ridiculous. This is going to be an all-time receiver class. I think. Mike.
I think so.
Absolute freaks all around. Yeah.
If you told me now all 3 of these top 3 guys will make the Pro Bowl next year, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Oh yeah,
that would not surprise me. So Marvin, we should just talk about him briefly. He didn't do any testing, so I'm not even going to bother scrolling down looking at it. But smooth route runner, finessed routes. He's got detail in all of his routes. Runs a diverse route tree. Can separate. Can get off press coverage. Does separate more generally, really effectively, but he can get off press. I think he just need a little bit of work getting off press. I did see some instances of him getting bogged down a little bit, especially against teams with those bigger, longer corners like Michigan. They did cause him some issues, but man, this kid's Larry Fitzgerald to me. But a bit quicker, which is a frightening prospect, and that's why he's going to go in the top 5 this year. If he goes to the Arizona Cardinals, I would just fly him out to Arizona, get him get him living with Fitzgerald, Larry Fitz, all of his first summer down there, get him bedded in. They can work out every day over the summer, get him ready for training camp, and then just hit play and watch him go. I would love to see that. That's a great landing spot, and I think Kyler Murray will just throw him up prayers from the beginning. So might not be the best for the Cardinals franchise, but you'll be good for Marvin Harrison's stats and for his highlight reel. So,
yeah, it'll certainly help their quarterback who's been ailing the last few years. Maybe not the run after catch ability that Larry Fitz has, though. Is that fair to say? Not quite the break tackle.
He's smoother after the catch than you think, but no, not power. When I think of Larry Fitz, especially latter Larry Fitz, when he was more in the slot and on shorter stuff, he would just bowl people over, and that is not Marvin's game. That's not Marvin's game right now. He's only 209 pounds. He hasn't hit an NFL weight room yet, so that might come. But no, I'd say smoother more than powerful.
Okay, no, good.